All right. Hey, everyone. Joe Welu, Total Expert, here with my good friend, Julian Hebron. Julian, how are you, buddy?
Doing well, man. How are you?
I'm excited to kick off part 2 of the Total Expert LinkedIn Live series with the basis point. Julian and I decided that we were going to do this series, have a conversation really every 2 weeks about some of the key topics, tactics, strategies that are going to impact organizations across the industry going into the back half of 2021. And then what really needs to happen. What are the thought leaders? What are the industry leaders doing to win going into the back half of 2021 and 2022 and setting the stage? So since we are live, really want great participation from any of you that have the opportunity to join us. Your comments, we got a lot of industry experts that I saw have registered. And if you're on with us live, please fill in the comments and share your thoughts and feedback. We want to make this fun and relevant as possible. So, Julian, why don't we get kicked off here? Remind us what we talked about here in our last session and what we have on the docket today as far as discussion.
Yeah, Joe, absolutely. I love doing this with you and the rest of the community out there. Quick note. If you make comments, I am not great at the live responses, but Joe, help me out if I miss a comment. But we do want you to comment. We do try to come strong with the technicals. So there's a lot of technical folks that listen in on this stuff. So if you're like, hey, you have a comment, jump in and we'll get right into it in real time. We'll do that today. We'll do that for the next several sessions, which are every other Thursday, 10:30 East, starting now. But yeah, Joe, to answer your question, in part 1, we talked about how to transform customer for life from tagline to reality. And if you guys missed that session, we did 3 quick things. We looked at customer retention from 2004 to now. And a very quick summary of that is like this. From 2004 to the crash, retention was a lot lower like it is now, retaining approximately 1 out of every 5 borrowers.
In industry average across the board.
Correct.
Right?
It went up during those post-crisis years, largely because a lot of competitors fell out. Hemp and HARP refis made it easier to retain. And now we're back to competition challenging retention again. And that's just kind of going to be how it is. So only the strongest players can kind of get this right. And that's why we do this kind of stuff. We also covered number 2, how the originations and servicing tech stack is finally converging. This is a servicing modernization story that we're going to cover in much more detail today. But the customer doesn't care. That's the biggest theme. We're going to get technical about delineating originations and servicing today, but let's all just remember that, and this is why Joe is so key on this, you guys, because he understands that the customer doesn't care about how we do all this stuff. They only care about their experience, right? And then number 3, where do customers spend all their time? This is the key to customer for life. So that's what we're going to pick up today, right? So with that, I am going to just actually pull up this slide. So let's make sure that everybody can see this. Yeah. So here we go. This is, Joe, this is where we left off. And at the basis point, we believe servicing is the key to customer for life. This visualization explains it, even on a long lead purchase, where you're dealing with bidding wars.
Importantly, it not only, it's a core component, but what's key to customer for life is really how you navigate that in the entirety of that customer journey, recognizing and acknowledging that the transaction part, traditionally our industry has spent a lot of the innovation, a lot of the efforts, a lot of the capital on acquiring customers, processing loans, and sort of running that manufacturing process, and largely forgetting about the incredible amount of value creation that can happen when you create incredible loyalty with your customers, right? And what we see really the best organizations doing right now in this moment, and I think COVID really helped this, is having really deep, incredible customer empathy and looking at the journey that a customer has with your organization truly from the lens of the customer. And I think it's really easy. It's easy for our business or any business to just think about it as we're in it every day, right? But a customer looks at it only from the things that either add value to them or create friction. In some cases, that's a deterrent, right? And so if I think about navigating that customer journey, asking the questions are, how are you transitioning those customers over from transaction to servicing? And then what are you doing during that entire servicing time period? If you're retaining servicing, then that's one sort of tool in your toolbox. But what are you doing to add value and deepen the engagement and relationship with that customer, right? We're seeing, high level, couple quick nuggets, educating people on sort of holistic financial wellness. House is in many cases the largest financial asset for a lot of homeowners, right? How are you keeping them informed of what that asset is doing? How are you keeping them informed of equity, of interest rates? Those types of things all kind of fall into that segment of the journey, which is that servicing and retention bucket.
And so, Joe, can I pull up one of the slides of yours
Yeah.
that is one of my favorites, because this is something that you've talked about for years in originations. But again, it's the same if we view it through a servicing lens, correct?
Yeah, I think looking at a customer journey, if I am a modern lender, either a bank or a non-bank credit union, anybody that's lending money, and I think about really how to be a modern lender and what that means, it really means mastering and continually optimizing my customer journey. And it doesn't just mean looking at the customer journey through transactions. It means here is our initial touch point, and here is basically the end of the customer's life. I want to service them and be a lifelong financial partner at every milestone through their life cycle. And you have to start with sort of that mindset and then slowly say, okay, where are my touch points? Where are my gaps? And then start adding improvement, start filling in those gaps. One of the fastest ways to grow a business, improve the business as a lender, is to start plugging those little gaps where you can add in automation by using data, add in higher quality communication, more personal communication, right? So those are all kind of examples of how I can fill in those experience gaps, which then set me up as a brand, as a lender, to be that financial partner of choice when we get into those second, third, and fourth transaction opportunities.
So, and I think a lot of folks know this, but I just want to note this, is that if you look on the right side of this slide, this is, if you will, you could consider this to be the servicing part if you're engaging properly and you're not just chasing people for payments or helping them when the escrows, too much of servicing is still thought of as mechanical. I'm collecting a payment. You have a hardship, and even hardships are still not quite treated as a customer care and experience opportunity. It's very mechanical, compliance oriented. And that's where modernization of servicing starts to take that originator mindset of like, we're selling to you. We care about you.
We care about you, right? I think if I can have one item, if I was just limited to one item that I can say has incredible impact, is when you can translate empathy from your organization, that you understand the customer, that you care about them, and that you're there for them as a financial partner. Really powerful to do that, right? To do that, however, requires well thought out and well executed customer journey management, customer journey orchestration, understanding that servicing element is a big component that I need to think through and think about how, from the lens of my customer, how that flows, right? How it flows from transaction to payment collection, and then also as sort of the months click by and the markets ebb and flow, interest rates evolve, markets change, and houses appreciate, what am I doing to add value? What am I doing to let them know I'm thinking about them, and not just saying, hey, happy birthday, right? Like there's, with the data that's out there, the data that you have from your customer, and also thinking through how can you use that data to add value to them.
So, and we're going to go deep on that. And guys, what we're going to do is we're going to take that origination servicing spectrum and lay out all the tactics across the whole thing. But first, what I'd like to do for either, the data geeks out there that really love this stuff, or the folks that are predominantly originators that don't necessarily get into the weeds on servicing, Joe, if it's cool, I want to zip through a couple of quick slides that are like, this is what's going on in servicing. And it is a little bit, more technical, but it's important. So let's talk about it.
You're a data geek at heart.
So yes, and for those of you who are on that share that in my heart, let's do this, right? So you don't have to digest all this, but I'm sharing it for folks that do like this stuff. But this is kind of the latest data from Inside Mortgage Finance about servicing. And so first and foremost, it's almost there's 12 trillion almost outstanding. But here's what's really important, I think, is if you zoom in on the top 50, servicing has room for everybody. And it's easy to scoff when you see the top 50. If you're saying, I'm going to get into servicing as I'm going to start to diversify, I'm going to talk about that in a second. But if the top 50 have 90% of the market, is there even anything left? Yeah, the remaining 10% is 1.2 trillion. That's a lot of customer lifetime relationships that you get to control if you get into it, if you compare that available market share relative to your originations, say. And it's also notable for anyone who's bank versus non-bank on today that bank, non-bank roughly share servicing equally. So next, this is a critical one, especially for originators thinking about getting into servicing. Subservicing is about 32% of the market. And so, of course, many of you already subservice. Some of you justifiably hesitant about subservicing, or those that do are like, my experience doesn't really work as well as I want it to there, because it is very mechanical and it's not experience oriented. It's not the same experience I'm delivering in the origination side.
It feels different, right?
Yes.
There's a clear delineation of the brand, and it's difficult to control certain elements of that, but there's a lot of progress being made around that sort of that better orchestration between subservicing and the originator, right? I mean, we see that.
So, Joe, when you and I look at the top 25 lists of subservicers, this is a critical part of the modernization story. Why? Because they're powering that experience for a lot of you originators out there. And this is where you come in and start helping them rewire and modernize and be like, okay, let's take this thing that you have mastered on the originations customer experience side and carry it all the way through to servicing. Is that a correct way of talking about where you're going?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, ultimately, really, I mean, there's a couple of different ways you can look at this, right? The way we look at it is from the lens of how, as a modern lender, how do I become the trusted financial partner for the entirety of my customer's lifetime financial journey, right? How do I become that person? And so we think about it always through that lens, and then we start looking at how do the pieces integrate? How does the data flow? How does the engagement and communication happen? And then how do you make each of those elements more personal, more valuable? And how do you constantly sort of improve that flywheel of engagement that we talk about that's so critical? And so I think it's really about the data being able to action on the data that I have across the entire journey. And as it gets into servicing, making sure that I'm able to have a very smooth flow of information and communication as that process takes over after the transaction closes.
And we're going to talk about that in like visually here in a moment, but I want to do one more, just again, not only for the geeks, but like, let's do a nice quick market update in one slide, which is like this. So you can't really ignore servicing in this current market. And so, you could argue that it is kind of the golden age of servicing, and you do have these two different primary goals, right? But let me see if I can summarize this in very plain language, right? You hear economists talk about this K-shaped economy where, the haves do better and the have-nots are struggling. And servicers, if you're doing servicing from a customer experience standpoint, you have to cater to both. So you're gathering MSRs at all-time record lows from strong borrowers, but defaults are going to kind of rise. And here's how that math works: is you're kind of optimizing for performing and non-performing servicing. So as of this week, we're down to 1.9 million borrowers in forbearance. 83% of forbearances have been extended since May 2020. 58% of those have been extended so for 12 months or more. So if you look in the middle column, you've got 915,000 forbearances extended for longer than 12 months. You have some regulatory relief that's enabling that. When that regulatory relief runs out, you start to have to cater to a different type of experience. We call it non-performing, right?
Yeah. So essentially what you're saying, and why I should care as a lender, is how am I going to manage the communication and
100%.
the quote unquote
Yes.
servicing of that customer, right?
Yes.
And I think it's important to understand that the term servicing, as we think about it in the industry, is the process of collecting payments on that loan.
It's a very
and
sterile
sending out,
term.
right? It's a very sterile term. But really what you want to do is say, I'm going to expand. I should be servicing my customer, okay, at all stages of the journey. Servicing, as it resonates with this sort of very sterile viewpoint of collecting payments, should expand to how am I servicing the customer holistically? Even if I'm not retaining my servicing rights, how am I servicing the customer? How am I, obviously the person, the people, the organization that's collecting the payments is a piece of that customer journey, but as the organization that wants the lifelong customer relationship, how am I servicing all of the needs of my customer? How am I showing them that I can communicate with them in a way that has empathy and context? Particularly, you've got a large set of consumers out there. It's not as large as I think we thought originally, but that large set of customers, you're going to be defined by that big group of customers at how well you navigate that process and how well you communicate with them. Would you agree, Julian?
Yes. And here, I'll add one layer. And this is, okay. So one of the parts of the DNA of what you built in originations, I was one of the early customers way back in the day on the origination side. And one of the biggest things was RESPA. And how do you deal with this very nuanced regulation in this experience-oriented way of like, we're delivering this joint realtor-lender relationship through that whole origination part of the experience? It's the same thing in servicing. It's just that the regs are way more technical, and that's why it is sterile, because most of servicing is about math and about compliance, right? But when you apply an experience perspective to servicing, this is where that compliance DNA of what you've built, powering a servicing, like helping servicers power it, not
the
from
orchestration, right? It's the communication and engagement
experience.
That happens.
Yes.
Yeah. And when we say experience gets used so much, and you're seeing every company talk about it, but experience should mean every touch point that a consumer has with your brand, right? At every stage of the customer journey rolls up to experience. And how we think about really impacting that experience and improving it is, how can I improve the quality and context and all of the pieces around communication that I'm communicating with my customer, whether it's email, whether it's a text, whatever it is. How can I optimize all of those pieces of engagement, all those communication activities? How do I do that? And then how do I make them work together so it doesn't feel so disconnected? And that's when we talk about experience through servicing and originations, that's really what we're talking about, is how to really deliver awesome communication and improve that engagement.
So let's do a visual on it. I'm going to just pull up a quick slide here. So now let's layer the tactics across that same image that we looked at before. And this is exactly what we're talking about, but it's so much easier to talk about it where if you view it through this lens, I know that you like this one because it's viewed through the lens that you see and consumers see the world, not
I think this is
all technical.
This is one of my favorite slides that you guys have done. And it's one of my favorite slides because all of the components in here are things that impact how the customer is going to interact with your brand. It's the things customers care about. It's things that impact either their loyalty or lack of loyalty with your organization, how you navigate each of these things, right? Some of the industry, what we consider to be really industry leaders on driving and extending the definition of experience, they're looking at, hey, I've got this set of customers. How do I give them knowledge and data on what their most valuable asset in most cases is doing, right? That's valuable to a customer. How do I help them navigate that home buying process, right? How do I get the education and the explanation of some things that they may not understand, right? How do I educate them? How do I incorporate sort of financial wellness, which falls in, you got hardship up here. You also have other products, other financial products that could mean, if you're on the banking side, other lending products that can impact a customer's financial wellness. So all of those little buckets that you have here really impact how a customer is going to feel about your brand, how you address each one of these.
Yeah, and I would just I would make a couple quick notes here that let's do this. I'll make one or two notes of like the things that I think can give a servicing experience the biggest lift right now, and then I would love for you to do the same, and if you can or are willing to, I would love to know if any of these involve any sort of partnerships and or things that you're working on that help very specifically power this stuff. So for any banks listening in today, the cross sell is this huge thing, right? We know from certain large institutions getting hit on overly aggressive cross sell a few years ago. That can be a dirty word, but it's not really when you view it through the customer lens, Joe, to your point of financial wellness and planning.
Valuable to your customer.
Correct.
Right?
And you have the right data. Here's the thing. Originators have a ton of data, but servicers have all the data, right? It's all real time all the time. And so servicing isn't quite using it just yet. So I love that one. That's just one of my faves personally. And then for me, if you will, pre-funnel on home buying, right? And that might segue you into something that that I think you're working on, because then if you turn this thing into a circle, that's fun. We spend a lot of time on visualizations, but I can't turn this into a circle, but then it just becomes a new origination, right? But anyway, any comments on your faves?
So, I think that number one, it's a really exciting time, and there's opportunity to make a lot of progress as I think about delivering that customer journey that's going to drive growth. Okay, I look at it as that loyalty and how I take care of that customer is going to be a huge growth engine, and it's been underutilized and under optimized, I guess, is maybe a word to look at it. And so us as part of the ecosystem, we've made this big transition to becoming a platform company, which essentially means that huge expansion of our APIs and capabilities, big initiatives we're working on with a lot of our customers. And it's really comes down to the core of that comes down to, hey, I've got lots of data that I need to be able to get insights from, and then I need to be able to take action on. Okay. And so that action might be communicating, sending an update to the customer that shows them what's going on with their home's value, shows them what a new scenario could look like for them if rates have fluctuated, all of those data points. So if I'm an organization, I guess one of my questions would be, are we in a good position to be able to digest all of the data points that we have through servicing, through the transaction and across the journey? And then are we in a good position to be able to action on those at an organizational level? And where we see kind of organizations fall short is they get really great data and really great insights on what's happening with their customer. If they have servicing, as you mentioned, they have a lot of data. But if you can't actually drive it and run a sort of a playbook on here's how we want to deliver this communication and this engagement at a corporate level, if you can't deliver that at a corporate level, you're going to be reduced to the lowest common denominators, right? And things are going to fall through the cracks. And so it's really a question of, am I in a position organizationally? And if I'm not, there's some really, I believe today there's quick wins that you can get and make progress quickly, really. I mean, we see organizations make meaningful progress in 90 to 120 days by just taking certain sets of the data points on customers and saying, we're going to put some basic communication and engagement in place on, this set of data, and ultimately get lift very, very quickly, right?
Yep. So
more mature and get more elaborate, but
and guys, we're doing this series because there's the next phase of the series is actually going to start to take, as an example, who thinks of their servicer on a purchase, right? And we joke about that, but it's not a joke. Like, how is it that they're not thinking about servicing?
Yeah, your consumer doesn't care what your different channels are or what your different pieces. They don't care what your silos are.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a really empowering thing when you realize that. And as a business, I think it's so important. And it's really, you get a lot of clarity when you realize that my customer does not care that I have a servicing arm, that I have a consumer direct, that I have a retail. They care. I need money to purchase my dream home, to purchase a bigger home, to downsize.
Fix this one.
I need to do a reverse mortgage because I need cash to retire. I need to tap equity to send my kids to college. It impacts their life, right? So how are you going to navigate that, knowing they don't care about the data silos and sort of the silos that just naturally happen as you scale a lending organization? They just care about how you are delivering value to them at the moments that it matters.
Yeah. And if we could, can we do I want to do 30 seconds on something I want to show. Like I said, if we could pull the slide back up. Remember I said, I wish I could turn this into a circle, because it really is a circle, which is everything comes back to a new origination, right? And so here it is. Like, this is how you see the world. And if we can just do 30 seconds on this, and then I'll tease the next segment.
Yeah, we started talking about this maybe 2 years ago on how the flywheel of attract, engage, and amaze never stops, right? It used to be, I looked at marketing and engagement as very sort of top of funnel pre-transaction. And now it defines everything across the customer journey. And you're going to be measured by how well you do this at every stage. So every experience, whether it's transaction or servicing, is going to lead to your consumers either having more trust or taking away trust if you fall short, right? If you feel disconnected and are sending them things out of context, that erodes trust. And that either increase or decrease in trust is going to be the leading indicator to your customer loyalty, which dictates the biggest prize of all, which is the lifetime value of those customer relationships.
And so, everybody, on that note, I'll throw up this quick teaser for the next one, and I hope you can mark your calendars. This is part 3. I think everyone has focused quite a lot on the shift to the purchase market, but I do promise you that if you come in 2 weeks from today and do another quick segment with us, we will tell you stuff that you haven't either heard or thought about yet.
Yeah.
And it's tactical. And it's stuff that I think that ties some of these bigger themes together, because this purchase war that we're facing is going to be different than the last time, and we'll explain why on the next one. But with that, Joe, I think we are a wrap because we want to make sure everyone is on target here.
That half hour goes fast, man. Thanks,
yeah,
buddy.
thank you,
for
Michael, for chiming in too on that last comment. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
And we will keep it rolling every other Thursday, guys.
All right. Be well, guys. Cheers.